So, Wifters, it's Prof. Gene. In this video, I'm going to show you 2 of 3 midterm problems that my students needed to solve during a 2.5-hour midterm hands-on exam with their Mac laptops. They were allowed to use a single page of 8.5 by 11-inch notes, typed or written front and back. They can add code to these notes, but they cannot open old code or access the internet. Now, they can take advantage of any features that are built into Xcode, and the reason that I limit things is so that everyone can be confident enough in their code to participate on teams and to survive a code interview. And this first portion is a playground where students build several functions and demonstrate some Swift skills, including arrays, loops, functional programming, functions, string manipulation, conditionals, and more. And then in the second half, students will use 4 functions built in the first half to build an app that displays Olympic logos. Let's do it. So up first, we're going to create a new playground named Olympics, and above the import statement, we'll add a comment to the very top of the code with your first and last name. And we know how to do that. Then question number 1 says delete all code except for the comment in the import statement and enter another comment saying Q1 logos array, and we'll create an array named logos using the strings that we can find at this URL. So first I'll enter my comment, then grab this URL, and in my code I'm going to say var logos equals and in between square brackets. And now let's head over to the browser, and at this URL we can see all of these strings. I'm going to highlight them all and then copy them, then head back to my code, paste these strings between the 2 square brackets, and adjust the square brackets so that they are at the start and end of my array. For question number 2, I'm going to add a comment stating Q2-print logos array, and I'm also going to print out that in a string. We know how to do that. Comment and print statement. And then we want to print out all elements in the logos array one after the other. Then we want to print all elements of the logos array one after another, and for full credit, we should only use a single line of code to loop through the array and print the values returned by passing each element into a function. And a properly working solution should use just one line of code, but if you don't know how to do this with just one line of code, you can use whatever technique you'd like for partial credit. So there are lots of ways to get this for partial credit. If we start typing for logo, Xcode wants to fill in the rest of the code for us, so we can tab over. We get for logo in logos with the curlies, and in between I'll just say print logo. Now if I shift return here, it'll take a while to show up. I'll make sure I can see the console in the debug area, but then I eventually see the results, and I can see the last element in the array is Brisbane. The first element is Paris. Everything's looking good. Now that single line loop technique was demonstrated in class. You've got that in your slide notes. To do that, we would just say logos dot and would use the for each statement. This is going to go through our logo array one element at a time, and it'll perform whatever's in between the curly braces here for each element. And in fact, I don't even need the parentheses. I can just put curlies after for each. And I want it to print out each element, so I'm going to say print, and in between parentheses here, I'm just going to say $0. The $0 is the equivalent of the logo singular value above. It's just Swift shorthand for the individual variable that's going to hold the individual element as we loop through all the elements in the array. So since I don't want partial credit, I want full credit, I'm going to highlight my for loop and command / to comment that out and shift return below logos. My for each statement executes and the output looks fantastic. Next up, we've got a comment stating Q3, get image name, and we want to print this out with a blank space in front of this line. So in our code, after our comment, I'm going to say print, and in between quotes, I'm going to use my escaped character to give me a blank space. Remember, that's \n. Then I'll paste in Q3-get item name. So \n is going to give you a line feed. It's going to look the same as if I were to put in a print statement with an empty string in here. You could use either of those techniques since I didn't ask you for one or the other. But then the question itself is to create a function named getImageName that accepts a string and returns a string equal to the string passed in minus any extension that might have been at the end of the string if it exists. And the reason we're doing this is we're eventually going to use this in an app that's going to take the string and it's going to put the value in a view. But image views in SwiftUI don't take extensions at the end, so we need to strip out the extension. And the question states that you may assume that any extension that you encounter is already listed in the extensions in the logos array. Then we need to loop through the logos array, calling getImageName for each element and printing out the return results, and I show you what this should look like. So here we say func getImageName, and in between parentheses we'll call the value we pass in logo name, lower camel case, colon, that's a string, and we're going to return a string, so we put in an arrow and then capital S string here, and in between parentheses, well, let's figure out which extensions we have. It looks like there are a bunch of JPEGs, JPGs in here, and also PNG. And also it looks like Tokyo 2020 has JPEG, so we've got 3 different extensions we need to strip out. The last one for Brisbane doesn't even have an extension. So in my function, I'll write a comment that I've got 3 extensions, .png, .jpg, and .jpeg. And this was in one of our lessons from our first app, and we also had this in our class notes. We're going to use replacing occurrences of with. Now we can't change logo name that we're passing in here because it's considered to be a constant. So what we'll do is create a new variable var. I'm going to call this new logo name. I'll set it equal to logo name dot replacing occurrences of with, and the of is going to be, why don't we start with the string .png, and we'll replace that with an empty string. So if the string has png in there, it's going to go away. Then I'll copy and paste the line below without the var in front of it, but I'm going to set new logo name to, not logo name, but I'm going to put new logo name in here because we're going to keep looking at our new logo name to see if we have not .png in here this time, but we're going to replace occurrences of .jpg. Then finally, I'm going to copy this line, paste it down below, and I'm going to replace the of.jpg with of.jpeg. At this point, if we've got any of these 3 possibilities, we've stripped them out of a variable we're calling new logo name, so we can return new logo name. Or if you wanted to, you could put the return right in front of this last call to new logo name replacing occurrences of, because this is just going to give us a string with no JPEG inside, and that's what we'll return. That's it. To print this out, I'm just going to copy my for each statement from above, paste it below, and instead of printing out just $0, I'm going to replace that with getImageName, and for the logo name, it's going to be $0. So this is going to loop through the logos array. For each occurrence of a logo element in there, that's what's going to be inside of $0. We're going to call getImageName. That's going to return a string with any of the extensions stripped out, and we're going to print that out. Shift return to try it out. And friends, if you scroll through the results, you can see that indeed we do not have any extensions in that list. These guys are going to be ready to use inside of an image view. Nice! Next up is question 4, the getYear function. Also print that out with a blank space in front of it. And I give you a big hint in here. So for the next answers, you might find the string method components separated by string to be useful. So this method returns an array of components that are separated by a character passed as the string above. So if we say var components array equals, and then this string here, 2028 Los Angeles, USA, with dashes sprinkled throughout, and we say dot components separated by, and then we put the string dash in there, what this is going to do is it's going to generate an array from the string with the following elements: 2028, Los Angeles, and USA. That's an array with 4 elements. And hey, the first element of that array is the string for our year. That's what we want. So using this knowledge, or you can use any technique you'd like, but I thought this would be nice and easy, so I give you that hint. Create a function named getYear that accepts a string and returns a string with just the year extracted. And if you want to use a different technique, I let you know that you can assume that the first 4 characters of the string are the year that you passed in, and you want to loop through the logos array and call getYear for each element, and I show you what the results should look like below. They're just the years. So back in our code, we'll say func getYear. We'll pass in again logo name, which is colon a string, and then an arrow with string that we're returning, and then in between the parentheses, we'll say var components array equals logo name dot components separated by. Code completion also provides you with some additional information down here. Again, it says it returns an array containing substrings from the string that's been divided by the character in the given set. So for separated by, we want to break out each of the individual elements with the dash. And if you wanted to, I'm not really sure which one is called dash or hyphen, but if you want to make sure you got the right character, you can just copy and paste it from above. Then all we need to do is to return the first element in the array. So that's return components array, and in between brackets, 0. To print it out, I'll once again copy my one-liner for each statement up here, paste it down below, but this time instead of calling getImageName, I'm going to call getYear. We pass in the same value, shift return, there are all our years, nice work. So after we got the year, we also want to get the country, so we're going to enter with a blank space Q5 get country, just like we've done before in a comment and a print statement, and then we're going to create a function get country, which takes a string named logo string, just as we've been doing. We're going to return the string, and it should only be the country extracted from that string. Now we can assume that the letters after the last dash minus the extension are the country. Now I also mentioned that the country name should be capitalized, meaning the first letter is in caps, while if the name is some variant of USA, then that country should be all uppercase letters, like USA as I show here. So you want to loop through the logos, calling get country for each element and printing them out. I show you what they should look like below. You can see every country starts with a capital letter except for USA, which is all caps. So this sort of combines results from the two prior questions. We'll say func get country, passing in logo name, colon, string, and that's going to return with an arrow the string, and in between curlies, we'll once again say var components array equals logo name dot components separated by that dash character or hyphen, whatever it's called. Then to get the country, we'll just say var country, and we'll set this equal to components array dot last. That gets the last element of the array, but you can get this a bunch of different ways. Note that last will return an optional, so we need to deal with that. No penalty if you force unwrap this with an exclamation point, but I'm going to use the double question mark nil coalescing in here. If there wasn't a last value because it's an empty array, and it never will be, I'll pass in an empty string. But then that last component is still got those extensions in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my country equals get image name, and I'm going to call logo name colon country. Now finally, to deal with the fact that country might not be uppercased if it's USA, and I want to uppercase USA, I'm going to say if country dot, and I'm going to say lowercased. So this takes the country value and it turns it into all lowercase letters. And I'll set this equal to the string USA in lowercase, then open and close curlies. So this will be true if I get any variant of USA. And what I want to do in here is I want to set country equal to country dot uppercased. Again, that'll take this value and return all uppercase letters. And I've got an error in here, but I'll fix that in just a second. Else, I want to capitalize the country. So in between the else curlies, country equals country dot capitalized. I'll return country. Once again, copy my one-liner for each up here. This time I'm going to call get country inside, shift return. And oh yeah, this error shows up for USA. So I took country.uppercase, but I didn't set that equal to country to update the country value. So up here, I'll just say country equals country.uppercase, shift return again, and I get the results I need. Nice. And you can check your results against the logos array up top, but everything's looking great. And question 6 is going to be get city. So we'll add our comment and our print statement with the line in front. And let's take a look at the question. So you should create a function getCity which takes a string named logo string and returns a string, same as we've been doing, but this time you're going to extract the city. You can assume that any values other than the value before the first dash and after the last dash constitutes the city name. There should be no dashes in the city name, and if the city is made up of multiple words, like Los Angeles, each word in the city's name should be capitalized. And I show you some examples below. And then you should loop through all of the logos and print out each city name like I'm showing you. So in our code, we'll create func get city in between parens. Once again, pass in logo name colon, which is a string, and then we'll arrow string because we're returning a string. And in between parens, I'm going to once again say var components array equals logo name dot components separated by with that dash or hyphen inside. And then we want to take components array dot remove first. That changes the array so that the first element isn't in there. We're going to do the same after. We're going to say components array dot remove last. Our array now only has the middle values. Most cities will have 1. Some cities, like Los Angeles, will have 2. So if there are multiple elements that make up the city name, we're going to go through those. So first, let's create an empty variable called city. We'll say var city equals empty string, and then we'll go for component in components array, and in between the parentheses, we'll say city equals city plus components plus an empty space because we want to make sure Los and Angeles has a space in between them, but this will give us an extra space at the end, but we know how to get rid of that extra space. We just say city.remove last, space gone. Then we'll return city.capitalized because we want to make sure that we capitalize every part of the city name. Copy our for each statement, paste it down below, but change get country in this case to get city, shift return, and look at all those city names. Every one of them capitalized. Los Angeles has capital L, capital A. Nice. So at this point, we're done with part 1. Up next is part 2, where we actually create our Olympics logo app. So now we're going to use what we wrote in part 1 to build this app that shows the various Summer Olympic venues, the city, country, year, and logo. Now press the right arrow and we can move forward in future Olympics. We can see that the last value in our array is Brisbane in 2032. Also note that when we reach the most future Olympics date that we have, the right button is disabled. We can also click the left button and move in the other direction. If we go all the way, we see the first Olympics that we have in our array is 1924 in Paris, France. The The left button is disabled. There are more modern Olympics, and one of the things that I might do in evaluating your code is see if I can add more logos. That'd be more elements to our logos array and a corresponding number of images to our app. And if the app works without any problem, including logos from the Winter Olympics. But with that as our goal, let's go ahead and build this. So up first, I'm going to create an Xcode project named Summer Olympics. Question 2 says we should add a string array named logos, which was created and used in the playground for this app. And also we should create a variable named logo number, and we're going to change that, but we should set the initial value to 22, which is the 2024 Paris, France.png value in our array. And Xcode is a little weird. If you have a playground that's open, I can't seem to be able to create a new project. So I'm going to close my playground first. Then I'll create file new project Summer Olympics. Then I'll open my Olympics playground that I had before so that I can use that as well. And I can command accent mark to flip between the different windows that I've got open. Now the first thing I want to do is to copy my logos array. So I'll highlight that and copy it. Command accent mark to return to my project. And I'm going to paste that right underneath my struct definition for the content view. And by the way, I'm not going to change any of the values that are in this. I'm just using this array as a reference, so I can actually set this to private let. I didn't ask you to do that, no points off if you didn't do that, but know that that's a possibility, and it makes your code a little bit more secure. Now, I also asked you to create a logo number starting at 22, which is the Olympics in 2024, so we'll say @state private var logo number equals 22. Then question 3 says visit this URL, so we'll highlight and copy this so we can paste it in and download all of the images. This is a Google Drive. Adding them to our app, we want to add the images. There are 3 of them for launch screen and set them to your app's launch screen, and add the image for Olympic-icon as your app's icon. So in the browser, I'll paste in this URL, then I'll highlight all of the files in this Google Drive, right-click, select download. I'll save mine to the desktop. Yours are probably in the downloads folder. Then I'll find that folder I just downloaded in the Finder. I'm going to highlight all of the files that are in here. I actually don't need my 3 launch screen files and my icon in this copy. Then I'll head to my Xcode project in the project navigator, click on assets, and I can go back to the Finder and drag all these files into the pane in the assets catalog that holds all of my assets. And yeah, I could have highlighted these 3 launch screen values. So I'm going to highlight them and drag them over. We can see there was a 2x and a 3x in here, so all 3 of them show up since they all have the same name. That's going to be my launch screen, but I also want to click on my app icon, then back in the Finder, drag that Olympic icon PNG file into my app icon square. I've only got any available created for you. You can create your own if you want, but then let's set up our launch screen. So we're going to click on the top project file in our project navigator, then click on info and the different options. This is called the info plist, and if I click to expose launch screen, I can click on the plus sign here, select image name. My launch screen's name is launch-screen. And I'll make sure I'm building on the most current version of iPhone when I'm recording this. Click on the play button. I can see the simulator shows this nice Olympic logos launch screen. First time you launch your app, your launch screen will linger a little bit more than usual. Now we've got nothing in our app, but if we click on the home button, we can see we've got this nice Olympic logo for our icon. Nice. Let's quit out of the simulator and get into our content view and start to code. So in question 4, we should add all 4 functions that we created in part 1. So let's head back to Xcode, and I'm going to command accent mark to bring up my playground. Highlight my first function, get image name, and remember we want to paste these in just before the closing curly of that topmost struct. And I'll do the same with my other 3 functions. And I've got get image name, get year, get country, and get city. By the way, we're not using these functions outside of this struct, so we could put the word private in front of this so that we don't pollute our namespace. But since we're not working with multiple files in here, that's not an issue. If I added private in front of the func and I was working on another file, code completion wouldn't recommend the stuff that's in another file that has private in front of it. Private means that this function's only available inside of this struct where it's defined. So now let's head over and look at question 5. We should keep the VStack in our app, but we should delete the views inside of the VStack and add a text view to the top of our app with the text Olympic logos in large title with black weight. So I'll get rid of the first image view, and the first text view will say Olympic logos, and I'll add modifiers .font, .large title, and .font weight, .black. Then since it's supposed to be at the top, I'll also add a spacer down below this. Looking good. Next question. Add an image view that will display an image from your assets catalog in the center of your app. Now use the image associated with the logos array's logo number element. And in order to get this to work, we should call our getImageName function in the image view's parameter value so that the return value from that function will display the proper image. Also, as usual, adjust the image so that it takes up the maximum space available without distorting the aspect ratio of the image, and at this point the app should look like, and I show you what it should look like. So below the spacer we'll add image, and we want the option with resource in here, and instead of passing in a string, I'm going to pass in get image name. Now this is going to return the string that I need if I pass in as the logo name, that's the logo's array, and in brackets, logo number. So that gets the 22nd element of the logo's array, which is for the Paris Olympics of 2024, and we can see that logo shows up. Nice. Well, not so nice because it's distorted. We have to add .resizable and .scale to fit, and since it's supposed to be in the middle, we'll add another spacer below. Looking good, that's just what we wanted. And in number 7, we're going to add a text view to the bottom of the app window. It should use thin font weight and large title font, and the text should be the city, country, where these are the properly formatted results from calls to get city and get country functions. Also below this, we're going to add another text view below the one we just created, and this one should use the get year function to display the year, also in large title, thin font. We can see an example of what this should look like, so let's build this. In Xcode, we'll say text, and we want the text string in here to be the result of 2 function calls. So I'm going to say double quotes and then string interp, comma space string interp. That first string interp is going to be a call to get city, and I'm going to pass in logos and in square brackets logo number. So that should get the name Paris and capitalize it from that Paris, France string. And then in the second string interp, passing in get country, and of course I made a bonehead move and put in get city. We'll change that in a bit, but I'm still going to pass in logos and in brackets logo number. When I fix this at the end of the lesson, that will give me the country. Then I'll add the modifiers font, pass in .large title, .font weight, passing in .thin. Below this, another text field, and this time this is going to have the year, so we're going to call get year, also passing in logos and in square brackets logo number. And since both of these text views use the same modifiers, I'm going to cut out the 2 modifiers here, embed these 2 text views in a VStack, and I'm going to put the 2 modifiers underneath the VStack. Doesn't really save me any code. It's up to you whether you wanted to do that. I didn't ask you to. I'll format things back up, and let's head back to the rest of our questions. So next we'll add 2 buttons at the bottom of the app. They should look like the buttons shown below, which have a large title font and black weight and black color. So below the VStack, I'll enter button. I want the option with action and label. For the action, I'm just going to put in a to-do comment, but for my label, I want an image with a system name. I want to pass in a string, but I didn't give you the string, so let's look under the plus sign under our system images. And you can search on all sorts of things. Chevron is what you call these less than greater than symbols. You could try searching for left or arrow. Not sure if it shows up in arrow, but it's definitely in left and in chevron. I'll double click this and we see the button shows up. Now we'll add our modifiers, .font, .large title, .weight, .black. But to get this button black, we have to say .tint, .black. Then to add another button side by side with this one, I'm going to embed this button in an HStack. I'm going to first highlight and cut out these modifiers, paste them below the HStack, then copy and paste my button code down below, but I'm going to change my chevron and my second button so that it says right. That's chevron.right.to.line. I'll put a spacer in between them, and this is looking just like I'd asked in the question, except for my lack of country, which we'll fix in just a bit. So for option 10, we see we want to press the left button, and that should decrease the logo number by 1. If we set up the other views properly, we should see that any change in logo number should redraw the other views, calling the functions for each view using each new value for logo number. Similarly, pressing the right button should increase the logo number by 1 and redraw those views accordingly. So back in Xcode, we can change our to-do for our action in our first button. All we need to do here is say logo number equals logo number minus 1. There's also a shorthand for this. We'll use that shorthand in the action down below for the second button. That's going to be logo number plus equals 1. It would be minus equal for the button above this. Now let's click the buttons. We can go up, we can go down. Working great, but if we get to our last element in the array, which is Brisbane, and click the rightmost button, we get an index out of range error. Our app crashes. We need to fix that. So in number 11, we say when the logo number is the index value of the first element, which is element 0, disable the leftmost button. And when the logo number is the index for the last element, which is count minus 1, disable the rightmost button. Make sure that the buttons are re-enabled if you click on the buttons to advance the logo number in the other direction. The code should work regardless of the size of the logo array, so you don't want to put any literal values in there. We show you an example of what these should look like so we can see the buttons are disabled at the first and the last logo. Let's head back to our code, and you might be tempted to add something more to your action, but believe it or not, folks, you don't need anything in the action. We can do everything we need from the disabled modifier. Under the second button, I'm going to say .disabled, and this disables the button if the value inside the parens is true. So in here, I'm going to say disable when logo number double equals logos, that's our array, .count -1. So when we're at the end of the array, logos.count -1, we're going to disable the buttons and we can't advance it, so we'll never get indexed out of range. Let's try it out, and look at that. We stop at Brisbane. We can't crash things. Let's do this in the other direction. I'm going to copy this disabled modifier, paste it below the first button, but instead of saying equals logos.count -1, I'm going to say equals 0, which is the first element in the array. So the left button will be disabled when I hit logo number equals 0. Let's try this out. We'll go all the way down to Paris 1924. And look at that. Paris had the Olympics 100 years apart. 1924 and 2024. Cool. But we can see our left button is disabling. Press the right button. We head back. If I restart my app, I restart at option 22, which is Paris 2024. Looking great. In that, my friends, my app is almost done, but I would not get full credit for this. I've got to change my second get city call to get country. Now we can try this out, and we can see if we go all the way to the right to Brisbane or all the way to the left to Paris. Our app is working just as requested. Hopefully you got this as well, and if you didn't, hopefully you now understand what you might have slipped up on. Every programmer makes mistakes. You saw me make a mistake in this solution here as well, but when you make a mistake, if you pay attention to what caused that mistake, hopefully you'll recognize the pattern and you won't do it again, or you'll be able to solve that mistake the next time the problem comes up. Until our next challenges, continue to hack.